For most producers, musicians, or beat makers, creativity or coming up with ideas is no problem, but putting them in the right order and the right proportions is sometimes. With the introduction of the pop form and the descriptive arrangement blocks, we already defined structures that work to create a sonic composition. But it is still hard to apply this abstract concept to your own production. So this is our 8-bar loop that we will turn into a complete track. Let's listen. If the traditional arranging workflow is analogous to painting, the subtractive workflow is analogous to sculpting. To be able to apply this method of subtraction, we now duplicate our 8-bar loop across the whole timeline. But first, let's listen to the single elements to know what we deal with here. Of course, most basic to any kind of techno track is the kick and bass section. Marked yellow here, we have our percussive elements, mostly hi-hats and shakers. Okay, this top loop is really energetic and gives a lot of swing to the song. Our mint green colored plugs are our only melodic element in this song. And below the melodic section, we have our 2 stab elements. The last section is our effect section that adds a lot of atmosphere to the whole composition. So to apply the subtractive method, we now duplicate our 8-bar loop across the whole timeline. So as you can see, our track is probably going to be around 4.5 minutes. As we learned in our previous lessons, we now have to create contrast. We do this with creating tension and points of energy and power. To do so, we need to subtract some elements now. In the beginning, in the intro, we have the least amount of elements. So in the beginning, we're probably not going to start with our basses. That's why we're going to erase them right now. We start in with the kick and some percussive elements. There won't be any melodic elements, so we erase our mint green section here. We start off our song by only playing the kick and our atmospheric elements. This serves as our intro. By slowly adding our hi-hats as our main percussive elements, we get some more power and some more tension going on. Since this is our construction part, we're adding more and more elements. Now we play our full hi-hat and percussive section. Before we want to set in with our bass, we need a little break. So we're going to mute the kick. And we're going to introduce our melodic part. In the first step of this lesson, we're not going to draw in any automations or adding additional parts. Of course, in this little build-up that we had here, there are some parts missing that we know from all kinds of electronic music. So the drop right now, or the full beat section as we call it, when the bass sets in, is not yet at its most energetic. So right now, together with our bass, we're going to play a 16-bar full beat section before we start building our break and build up for the first big drop. So since we're only using the material that we have so far, a lot of parts that we know from techno in this genre is missing right now. But we will introduce it later and show you some tricks how to do easy and good sounding transitions. After this breakdown and build up part, we will have our first real drop. After our first drop of 16 bars, we're going to build our second breakdown. This breakdown will be more rhythmical, which can be seen that we leave the kick drum in. We don't want a complete melodic breakdown like in our first break, so we keep some more percussive elements going at the same time. So after our breakdown and build-up part, we set in with the bass again, but we got rid of the melody to create some contrast. And right now, we're going to enter the deconstruction part, where we just taken away element after element until we're left with a strip beat. Okay, up until here, you see that in just a couple of minutes, we were able to build the core elements of a working arrangement with a working arc of tension. But still, we can tweak a little bit to make it even better. So therefore, we're gonna add some more elements, especially in the build-up parts, to create some more tension. So for you to be able to follow along, we're gonna name the parts now. Of course, we're gonna start with an intro. After 4 bars of intro, we already enter our construction part, where we're slowly adding all of the elements that we need for the song. After the construction part, we have our first break, where we introduce our melodic elements. That way we can put a lot of focus on the melody, which leads us to the first section of the full beat. In the full beat section, all of the elements are now introduced, so we are able to break them down the first time. So what comes next is our first breakdown, followed by the first build-up. This build-up introduces our first full drop. which we enter at bar 81. After 16 bars of drop, we need another break to keep the song interesting and to create some dynamic and contrast. As we told you before, these differ a little bit in intensity and building tension, but you realize that due to the more rhythmical elements that we have here. So after the second breakdown and build-up, we enter our second drop, but this time without the melody. After the first drop, we start deconstructing the song in our deconstruction parts until we reach the outro in the last 4 bars. As you can see, in just a couple of minutes, we ended up with a coherent parabolic arrangement. That means we have intro and outro, which mark the beginning and the end of the track. We have as an introduction of the parts, the construction part, which then leads to the deconstruction part in the end, kind of the equivalent to it. We have certain breaks that we always need as an introduction for the beat part or the drop section. And then the breaks and build-up parts differ in intensity, and we show you some tricks how to even increase or decrease intensity in these parts. Okay, so let's just listen to the result, and then we're gonna check if we need to change something or if the song needs some more elements to create more tension. So after listening to your arrangement for the first time with open ears, you will probably realize that you can always apply some improvements. We found out that this melodic part, for example, needs to be muted to create some more contrast between the build-up before and the second part of the drop, where we have more energy when we reintroduce it. So let's listen to this and see if you feel the same way. In contrast to the first drop, we can now apply all melodic elements to the second drop right away. That way we end up with a more energetic second and last drop. At this point, we can of course start introducing new elements to create tension, and we don't have to be bound to the elements that we already have. For example, we can introduce rhythmic elements like snare rolls. We can create more density with a pad sound, for example, that is evolving and increasing in cutoff, or that has a filter automation. And I already said the last element, we can apply some automations with gain, filters, or cutoffs. And we will start applying them now. To make this first break part a little more interesting, we're adding some snare and cymbals. As you probably heard, it doesn't take much. Sometimes it's only elements like a snare roll or a little cymbal that create a lot more tension than it was before. So it increases the impact of the first full beat section here. To add some variation and dynamic to the second part of the full beat, we're adding some more percussive elements. This is another cymbal. To add an increasing level of tension for our build-up and break part, we will introduce a pad with a filter automation. This pad has a disharmonic interval of an F and an F sharp, but also some harmony of F and A. This combination gives us the perfect tool to create tension right away. You will see what we mean. Of course, in this build-up section, we exaggerated a little bit, but you get how easy it is to add tension with these pad sounds. It fills it up, it gives it more density, and we're longing for the drop to release all this tension into an energetic dance part again. Another possibility to add tension is to add some automations. For example, here in our melodic elements, the plucks, we show you now how we can increase the tension in this part.